I call this meeting to order for the MRH School Board on November 19th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We have a forum this evening. It is an unusual public forum as we had assumed we would be in person, so had accepted public comments in written submissions in advance of this meeting. We're going to read those submissions, and the parameters we'd set were for 15 minutes for public comment. I believe we have 18 submissions this evening, so we may run slightly over that. I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes, but we'll see how many we can get through, being as efficient as possible. Appreciate all the community sharing input in a variety of ways over the last month. And so with that, I'll let Kat begin to read those comments, which will be included in the minutes from this meeting, whether or not they are read aloud.
Thank you. Our first comment this evening is from Rachel Brewer. The comment reads, I am very disappointed with the board's decision to continue virtual learning. I think that it was a poor decision to make, much like most of the decisions made by the district. The board isn't present when these kids are at home crying because they get so frustrated with the online learning. The board isn't present to witness the kids suffering. I will be doing my very best to take my son out of the district, and until then, we will try to meet the impractical demands of the virtual classroom. Thank you. The next comment is from Gina, larose. Comment reads, I want to start by acknowledging how terribly taxing virtual learning has been on all families and teachers in our region. Our family is struggling with 2 working adults and 3 young learners, 1 with special learning needs. Without the tireless assistance of my mother-in-law, we would certainly be flailing even worse than we are. These circumstances have forced us to reevaluate our priorities as a family and as citizens of a larger community. I know that this year looks enormously different than previous years, but we are taking the opportunity to teach our children what it means to be compassionate members of a community. And right now, that means sacrifice and prioritizing relationships and mental health over the usual bustle of academics and extracurriculars. Thank you to the Board of Education for making this tough decision to keep our community safe. The next comment is from Jennifer Day. The comment reads, thank you, Board of Education, for making hard decisions and trying to lead through this difficult time. There seems to be a lack of leadership, and we are left trying to figure out how to navigate on our own. Missouri, in particular, is seeing cases of COVID rise to record numbers as hospitals are becoming swamped with patients. Although people are surviving the virus in greater numbers, that doesn't always come without a long-term price in health consequences and medical bills. I know those thoughts were foremost in your mind as you thought about opening schools. The safety of teachers and students needs to continue to be paramount. Teachers have proven that they can teach remotely. Now we ask, how do we support parents and children who don't learn as well remotely? As a community member, I want to be a part of the solution. The next comment is from Angela Lapin. The comment reads, "Dear MRH Board of Education, thank you for the significant amount of time and effort you have put into creating a safe environment for our children to learn during unprecedented times. As we enter into cold and flu season and watch the number of COVID cases increasing, I am reassured by the decision to remain virtual through the end of the year. While virtual learning is not ideal for any family, the teachers at MRH are going above and beyond to make this the best experience possible for our children. Learning is not only accomplished in school, but also through life experience. This experience is an opportunity to teach our children how to maintain a growth mindset. When this pandemic is over, we will remember how our communities and school came together to support our children. Thank you for your leadership." The next comment is from Amy Brihan. The comment reads, "I am writing to express my support and gratitude for the board's recent vote to keep schools remote through the end of the semester. I know it was a very difficult decision, and many MRH families are struggling right now, and I appreciate the board putting science and teachers, staff, student safety first. We are seeing a third peak. Missouri reported peak COVID-19 hospitalizations just this past week, and things are going to get worse as the cold weather arrives. Thank you. I am so grateful for your hard work, care, and compassion for and on the behalf of all MRH families." The next comment is from Stephanie Sutton. The comment reads, "Thank you. Thank you to the board for voting to remain all virtual through the end of the semester. This was the right decision and likely saved lives. I hope that the loud, angry pushback from many in our community will not dissuade you from continuing to keep our students, families, teachers, and staff safe. The eventual plan to return to in-person learning should have the full support of our teachers' unions. We also should have well-defined criteria for when we need to return to Tier 3 and a better understanding of what specific data is being used to make these decisions. I appreciate the many hours you all have invested in this work, and I strongly support your decision to remain virtual this semester." The next comment is from Julie Francois. The comment reads, "I am writing to thank the board and administration for all their hard work and long days and nights. This is an extraordinary circumstance, hopefully once in a lifetime. Please continue to listen to all perspectives, all voices, not just those that are the loudest or speak the most. I myself am in support of whatever the board decides, as long as we listen to the experts, we listen to our teachers and staff, and we listen to our families. No decision will fulfill everyone's needs or wants, but if the decision is made without transparency and open discussion, then I will know you have done your best. I do ask for more transparency as we work towards a reopening plan. Let's announce that plan as soon as possible. We can always change our minds, but please take the proactive steps to have something ready in January." The next comment is from Sarah Harland Kramer. The comment reads, "To the members of the board, first, let me say thank you for your service in this unprecedented time that is facing us all. I cannot possibly understand the immense pressure you face living out your day-to-day lives while also attempting to maintain a good head about yourselves. As the main caretaker within an immunosuppressed household, it has become clear to me that most in our community have lost sight of the very thing that will allow us to get through this pandemic, our community strength and commitment. Thank you for making the hard choices for our community when so many have lost sight of that surrounding this vote. I urge our board to look to the processes of successful community implementation in Vermont, New York, and Oregon. Missouri has failed to contain this, and we should not take that lightly. The next comment is from Tiffany Tasman. Comment reads, "Thank you for your courage, MRH Board of Education, in standing strong to support equitable education opportunities for our students, while not losing sight of the very real implications of this epidemic on every member of our beloved community, but particularly the most vulnerable among us. We may never get the leadership and support we deserve from the county or state level, and you should not have to step up as you have in this vacuum, but lives will be saved because you did." The next comment is from Serena Makunda. The comment reads, "I support the board in remaining virtual through the end of the semester." The next comment is from Brad Jackson. The comment reads, "I just want to say that I am so thankful for the decision made by the MRH school board to keep schools closed for the remainder of the semester. I know that the decision was a difficult one and that it will certainly impact many families in different ways, but the truth of the matter is that there is simply no safe way to proceed until we have the information that, frankly, is not available at this time. No risk is worth taking when it comes to our children. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making the brave and informed decision in the face of so much opposition and misinformation." The next comment is from Jane Walsh. The comment reads, "I'm writing simply to inform you that I approve of your decision to delay reopening schools until further notice. Numbers are skyrocketing, flu season is starting, individuals and buildings are not safe. Thank you for the decisions you've been making." The next comment is from Christa Frisella. The comment reads, "Hello, Board of Directors. I'm writing to let you know how grateful I am that you have decided to keep school virtual through the end of the semester. With cases on the rise and cold and flu season coming up, it just doesn't make sense to return anytime soon. For so many, this virus is more than just getting sick for a week and then recovering. My brother's family started in hybrid and his whole family got it. Now my otherwise healthy nephew has had a fever consistently for 3 weeks since his diagnosis and testing negative for COVID. He is also short on breath and the doctor found a pulmonary nodule on his lung. The lasting effects of this virus are unknown. It is proven that this virus is disproportionately affecting Black and Brown families. We must stay diligent and protect our families. I appreciate you, Christa Frisella." The next comment is from Amber Withycomb. The comment reads, "I support the board's decision to remain in Tier 3. Regionally, we lack widespread testing and have poor public adherence to masking protocols. Our state positivity rate has soared to 21.1%, and the St. Louis County Black and Latino residents are contracting the virus at twice the rate of white residents. Black residents make up 24% of the county's population, but account for 36% of COVID deaths. We cannot prioritize indirect benefits over direct effects. Students of color are more likely to lose a parent or caretaker to COVID, and also more likely to become hospitalized from the virus. Staff of color are at higher risk of contracting the virus and suffering long-term health consequences. When we demand that schools reopen, whose needs are we prioritizing? Whose lives are we privileging? What does it say about the equity that we seek to advance?" The next comment is from Beth Newman. The comment reads, "MRH School District Board. We support the board's recent vote determining the need for increased safeguards prior to students' return to on-site attendance. This decision was not embraced by all in our community. The MRH family is hurting right now, some more than others. We too want children back in MRH facilities, but see no reason to prematurely put anyone at risk based solely on the unproven optimism of nearby districts. Before reoccupying our school buildings, means of assessing risk must be defined and shared. Guidelines for the safe use of our facilities should be communicated to families at the outset of planning, not after a board vote. Recommendations should be detailed, easy to monitor and enforce, to scale up or down as needed, and always focus on the health of our children, faculty, and staff. Sincerely, Beth and Brihan Newman. The next comment is from Nikki Rainey. The comment reads, as the November election approaches, leadership and integrity are heavy on my mind. This week, there has been a lot of gossip, noise, pettiness, and bullying about your decision to keep school closed. Honestly, as a frazzled working mom with highly immunocompromised parents, I feel both sides deeply. We are all struggling so hard just to get through each day. I am often skeptical of politicians and elected officials, but I see true leadership and integrity on this school board. You all made a smart decision with real information and took equity and the greater community into account. I want to say to both the board and school leaders, I believe in your leadership and I respect you all greatly. I see and admire your hard work, deep thinking, and thick skin. Thank you, Nikki Rainey.
Thank you, Kat. That's 15 minutes. I think I managed to hear almost all of the submitted comments. I'm gonna ask you to include the rest of those in the record of this meeting, and we're gonna move forward. Appreciate the input from our community, public comment, through emails, through in-person conversations. We've continued to hear many voices. So to the rest of our meeting, can I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Aye.
Our first study item is for the audit report, and I believe we have visitors from KEB with us this evening.
All right, Brian and Allison, this is Chris Holzer. So first of all, I'd like to thank the audit team from KEB. You all worked extremely hard, and it was even more difficult this year with us all being virtual. So we appreciate our partnership and look forward to your report.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Brian Wertz. I'm a partner with the firm. I think, Allison, are you going to share your screen with the board as I go through this presentation?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to call that up.
Yep.
I'm going to go to the next page. So in our report to the financial statements, obviously we're issuing our report this year as we do every year. And included in our report is the independent auditor's report, the MD&A, which is management discussion and analysis, which is unaudited because it's non-financial in nature, so we can't give an opinion on it. But it's basically management's outlook as to the historical data within the financial statements and the future of the district. So that it's some important information. We review the information to make sure that the numerical pieces of it tie to the financial statements themselves. But again, because it's not numerical in nature for the most part, we can't give an opinion on it. So that piece is unaudited. Then we have the basic financial statements, which include the government-wide financial statements and the fund financial statements, and then the notes to those financial statements. Also included is supplementary information, which presents budget to actual financial statements for each fund. And then there are notes to those financial statements or notes to that supplementary information. Then there's a section on state compliance, which is as it relates to budgeting, attendance, and transportation, and federal compliance for federal programs as it relates to federal programs. As I do these presentations, I like to discuss what each of our responsibilities are when it comes to an audit. So the second paragraph of our audit opinion basically says what our responsibility is when it comes to an audit, or your responsibility is when it comes to an audit, and that is to prepare the financial statements. The other thing that you are responsible for is to determine that the basis of accounting used to prepare the financial statement is appropriate. The district has selected the modified cash basis of accounting, which is not GAAP, but it's still appropriate. If you were reporting on the GAAP basis of accounting, your government-wide financial statements would be presented on the full accrual basis of accounting. Your fund financial statements would be presented on the modified accrual basis of accounting, and there'd be a reconciliation between the two. These financial statements, the government-wide financial statements and the fund financial statements, are both presented on the modified cash basis of accounting. So basically, you're presenting the same information just in two different formats. The last responsibility, which is also an important one, is that management should design and implement and maintain an internal control structure to safeguard the district's assets and to make sure that the financial statements are not materially misstated and go undetected. So that's the internal controls of the district. Our responsibility then, as it's reported in the third paragraph of the opinion, is to express an opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. We do not give absolute assurance because we do not do 100% test of transactions. So basically, when we perform an audit, we determine where we think there are risks that there could be a material misstatement in the financial statements. And based on our auditor's judgment, we determine what procedures need to be performed. So there are certain procedures that are performed on every audit, but it's a risk-based approach. So we determine where the risks are in your financial statements and develop procedures and test in those areas that we think there could be a risk of a material misstatement. In doing our audit and planning our audit, we review the internal controls of the district and we get an understanding, and we will run several transactions through the internal controls to make sure that they're working as they were documented to us. But we do not give an opinion on the internal controls of the district. That is outside the scope of an audit. The most important internal controls that we do review and get an understanding of are the revenue cycle, the expenditure cycle, the payroll cycle, and then the financial reporting. So basically, we want to make sure that your financial reporting every month is accurate, as well as not just at June 30th, but every month within the year. We perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. The type of opinion that we did issue is an unmodified opinion, which basically says that based on the modified cash basis of accounting, the financial statements are free of a material misstatement. So it's the best opinion you can get based on your basis of accounting. Next slide. Internal controls over financial reporting. If there were any weaknesses noted as we performed our audit, we'd be required to disclose those to you. We're happy to report that we had no material weaknesses noted, and we also had no non-compliance as it related to federal programs and laws and regulations, contracts, and grants. Next slide. As I talked about on the state reporting requirements, we review the budgetary and disbursement procedures, the accurate disclosure of attendance records, and accurate disclosure of transportation records. We perform that part of our audit in accordance with attestation standards established by the AICPA, and we issued an unmodified opinion on the state compliance as well. Other required communications. We're required to have certain communication. The most significant accounting policies is note 1 to the financial statements. And as I said before, these financial statements are prepared on the modified cash basis of accounting. There have been no changes in the accounting policies from prior years, so everything's consistent from year to year. No transactions lacked authoritative guidance or consensus. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. Very important, we had no difficulties encountered in performing our audit, and we had no disagreements with management. There were no financial misstatements detected as a result of our audit. So basically, as a result of our audit, if we found a misstatement in the financial statements, we certainly want to make you aware of that. And we're happy to report that we didn't have any misstatements as a part of our audit procedures. So basically, the financial statements that management gave us are the financial statements that you're seeing right now. We did obtain a representation letter, which is dated November the 13th, 2020, which is the date the financial statements were approved by management and were ready to be issued. That basically the management rep letter is a letter from management to us stating that they responded to all of our questions to the best of their ability. They provided all the financial information that we requested. They didn't withhold any information, and they made us aware of any contingent liabilities or any subsequent events. The subsequent events goes through November the 13th. So if there's a subsequent event between June 30th and November 13th, we'd be required to analyze that and determine if there was a disclosure or an adjustment that needed to be made to the financial statements. Anything that happens after that date, we're not required to review. If management had any other consultations with any other independent accountants during the year, we'd be required to make you aware of that. To our knowledge, there were none. Yeah, as Chris noted earlier, we're in sort of unprecedented times here and doing audits the best that we can through portals and the best that we can. And we appreciate everybody's help in getting this thing accomplished. I believe this is one of the quickest years we've gotten this thing done. So thanks to everybody for their help. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the work of the team, and of course, Chris and the team at MRH being, just so open with the information.
Thanks, Brian and Allison and your teams. And we'll look forward to this time again next year.
Thank you so much. Everybody be safe.
All right, we'll move along then in the agenda. If there are any questions for Brian and Allison, appreciate you all making the time this evening.
Our pleasure.
All right. The next item up then is presentation or check-in with ITNR. I think Julie is with us this evening.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi, how is everybody this evening? Thank you for your time. We have our regular monthly update here, so I will dig right in. So this is the graphic we look at basically every month about the project process, and we are moving through the schematic, the design phase basically. The ECC and elementary, we are nearly done with construction documentation, and the middle school, high school, we are almost finishing up design development. So those schedules are staggered because there's a lot more scope in the middle school and the high school. And we will plan to bid them all next spring, next March. We talked to administration about the potential of moving the ECC and the elementary up a month or two to get started before the end of the school year, but the desire was to have as much normal time in school next spring as possible. So we'll start construction at all three buildings next June with an allowance for summer school at the ECC. We are wrapping up design development cost estimates at the ECC and the elementary. They'll basically be construction documentation level cost estimates, but obviously by our in-house people, not contractors at this point in time. And we actually those are complete and those are favorable, no issues there. The middle school and the high school with its bigger scope, we have an in-house estimate underway. We're also getting a cost estimate by an independent cost estimating consultant, and that is due back to us in the middle of December. And if needed at that point in time, then we will reach out to you all to review the district priorities and determine if there are potential bid alternates on each of the projects, look at the overall budget and the scope, and just make sure that we're maximizing the construction funds. We also, at the middle school and the high school this week, had our construction management team do a constructability and phasing review because of the complexity and the breadth of the scope in that building. So as you know, in addition to the various additions, we have renovation over here, renovation over there. So it's a sticky and tricky project there. So we walked through and reviewed the project with our in-house construction personnel. They're taking a look at phasing that we're proposing, particularly as we move through construction in the building, that will give administrators and staff the framework to kind of move classrooms around if needed, and to understand what parts of the building will need to get in and when. And then we plan to do the same with some general contractors that we'll just reach out to on our own to obtain their opinions on phasing and the overall construction schedule. It's just great to have another set of eyes, or a couple more sets of eyes, on a project as big and complicated as this, to get their opinion on that phasing and that construction schedule. We have quite a few municipal and jurisdictional reviews that we're in right now. The ECC and the elementary school site plans have been submitted to MSD. As requested, Richmond Heights was adamant that we submit to MSD even though we're not tying into any existing sewers. At Maplewood we are, so we went ahead and submitted prior to submitting for permits in both of those municipalities. The MSD review typically takes a pretty long time, so we wanted to get that started. And I think we have comments back on the ECC. We don't have comments back on the elementary school yet. And then we're scheduling a preliminary meeting with the Richmond Heights Fire Marshal to discuss fencing and site safety, just to make sure that they don't have any concerns with the way that we intend for the fencing and the gates and the various security features on campus to work. Maplewood, we've had those conversations already, but we need to just confirm that Richmond Heights is on the same page as we are. At the middle school and the high school, we had a variance hearing at the Board of Adjustments in Maplewood on October 22nd, and the setback variance that we were requesting there was granted. If you all recall, when we got the survey a couple of months back, the property line at the intersection of Lohmeyer and Gerhard was not quite where we had believed it to be based on previous surveys. And so we needed to reconfigure a section of the front of the building, the proposed plans, and then also go to Maplewood and ask for a setback variance. So that was granted, which was great because then we don't have to redesign that area again. And then we also went before the Design and Review Board last week with a preliminary review of the exterior of the building to make sure that they didn't have any concerns with the overall massing, window sizes, material choices, and things like that. And their response was favorable. That was a preliminary review, and we will go back in front of them a final time before we get permits, if not before. And I anticipate we'll probably go back to them prior to that final review even. The board recommended that we incorporate some more limestone in the cafeteria addition base. They said there's limestone on the other end of your building, there's limestone on the pool building, and that it might be good to have it mesh more in on the south side to have some limestone in the cafeteria base below the masonry that we have there. And they also said that they looked forward to seeing further development of the improvements along the edge of Lohmeyer at the intersection of Lohmeyer and the new building. At the elementary and the ECC, we did a construction document review with principals and admin staff just this week. And the elementary school, the piece there that we're not quite wrapped up with is the playground. We had a playground design kickoff meeting on November 11th. And one of the reasons that that's a little bit delayed is that in our experience, it is much to your benefit to get playground equipment from your co-op rather than trying to broadly specify playground equipment on our end. You'll never get quite what you want that way. So we'll be guiding the process of working through your co-op with a equipment provider rep to make sure that you get the things that you want out on that playground. And we wanted to make sure that we were clear on scope, vision, and just what we needed to achieve in that area before getting any other party involved in that process. So surfacing, edging, irrigation, and landscaping will be incorporated to our construction documents before they go out to bid in the spring. The playground equipment will help you procure through your education co-op. And then we're doing ongoing coordination with the district regarding intercoms, security, AV, and technology. That's the other piece of it that's not quite 100% in our documents yet. At the middle school and the high school, we finished the minor plan reconfiguration resulting from that lot boundary discrepancy last month. And then this morning we had an interior finishes palette meeting. And we'll be dropping some more samples by the building probably next Monday or Tuesday. And then we are looking forward to another round of design reviews by the user groups. So each of the spaces that receives a significant amount of work, we're meeting with staff and faculty involved in those areas to review. This round will be finishes, materials, casework, lighting, things like that. We were hoping for the week of the 30th. Due to scheduling, it's probably going to be a week or two after that, but we'll definitely get that in before the holidays. These are just some of the graphics and images that we've been preparing lately. So this was the 15-foot setback is the yellow line. The red line is the property line at the high school. So if you recall, when we looked at this last, the building was kind of squared off and over that red line. So we had to rotate a stair basically inside and reconfigure some offices to get it within the property line, but then had to go to Maplewood for that variance so that the building could pass over that yellow line. So we are all clear on that. And then these were some of the graphics that we submitted to the design and review board, primarily to confirm masonry materials and things like that. Maplewood has a 90% masonry ordinance on new buildings. So 90% of the facade of the building that isn't glass needs to be masonry. We are proposing brick to match your existing brick, and then ground face CMU at the base, and then we will be incorporating some rough face limestone at the base of the cafeteria per their recommendations. So that's where we are at this point in time. Any questions? All right.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Although I'm not sure if you're sticking around for the Lohmeyer construction
Oh,
impact.
I can. Sure. Yep.
That's the next item. Chris or Francis, go ahead with the.
I'm here. Sorry about that. All right. Good evening, everybody. Let me get this started here. Okay, you should be looking at the slide that says Maplewood City Council Work Session. Okay, so last month, our design team from Ittner, along with Francis and I, attended the Maplewood City Council Work Session to present an idea we have surrounding the safety and security of our staff and students and guests to our campus. Part of this construction will bring the building very close to the property line on the Lohmeyer side. So an idea that we had that will hopefully protect the safety and security of our students, staff, and guests would be to erect a gate on Lohmeyer, bounded both by the Gerhard and Florent intersections. We presented this idea to the city, and this is a quick look at what that would look like. So if you can see my cursor here, this would be the gate location on the Gerhard side, and I said Florent, I meant Martini, and this would be the gate location on the Martini side. Overall, the City Council was receptive to our idea. However, we do have some additional work that we need to do. So those additional items, we do need to get some input from our immediate neighbors that will be impacted by this potential change. And we need to do a traffic study to understand what the traffic through that area is. Of course, understanding right now with the public health crisis that we're currently in, the traffic might be greatly diminished from what it would be at this time during a normal school year. But we still need to conduct that traffic study, and Ittner and our partners over at Ittner and our partners are going to help us facilitate that. And then we have some decisions to make on our end as far as when these gates would be open and when they would be closed. So those are some internal conversations that we need to have. And of course, there's always the design conversations. What will these gates look like? One of the concerns, speaking directly to safety and security, is how would our first responders access the front of the campus in case of an emergency? And we have a solution for that. One thing that would also greatly improve the safety at drop-off and dismissal is being able to queue up the buses right in front of the building with the protection of those gates. So that is would be a huge benefit for us. Francis, would you like to jump in and share anything?
Yeah, I think Chris and the team from Ittner did a really good job presenting to the council. I'd say, their main concern was just, neighbor feedback. So we'll just have to figure out a way to sort of collect feedback from any neighbors around, the general parking lot area. They had specific questions around special events, evening events, sporting events, once we, sometime in the future are back to some sense of normalcy. The morning situation, during the week, I think generally wouldn't be that big of a problem. I think there's some things internally that they had questions about, just how do we control student parking access, who gets to park where, and how are we tracking that? Because we have more and more students that are driving to school. And so obviously, if you've ever in the last year or so tried to park on the parking lot during an actual school day, it's pretty full. So spill over onto Florent and some of the other streets where we have students sometimes parking in front of, neighbors' homes and on private residence streets and things like that. Well, I think there's some things internally we just need to think about, not necessarily for the board to think about, but for administration to come up with ways to better control that. But as far as design and construction and the overall sort of flow of how it could work, I think the council saw, really no main objections to it other than things that residents may bring up. Those were kind of their main concerns, and particularly kind of the entrance off of Florent Avenue as well. But Chris or Julie, am I leaving anything else out that I think the board needs to hear? Otherwise, I think it was a very positive presentation.
Yeah, I think so too. Their primary concerns, I think, were about messaging and getting information out to people who would be affected by this. So otherwise, they were positive.
So I think we have, some good data and, communication contacts from, when we ran the proposition as far as reaching out to the community. So we may want to do some reach out to, specifically look at that list and look at, culling the list down to the residents that are, specifically going to be potentially impacted by this around those streets. We could maybe internalize that list and see if there's anybody else we need to add to that. But, I think one of the jobs we'll have as a district is just collecting that information and then, being able to address some of those concerns to the council.
Have we ever done anything like, flyering around, the building, or is that something we would consider doing? I don't know, just, the dropping a flyer or something along the street or two that would be impacted. I don't know the history of some of the, additions in that particular neighborhood that I know have happened over the course of the district history here.
I can speak to that a little bit. Yes, Katie, we have done flyering. We've hosted a neighborhood like coffee meeting with the residents and brought them in. And this is obviously when we were constructing the parking lots, was a very different, much larger kind of adventure than what this is. So additionally, I was just thinking out loud, thinking, could we work with the council people for that ward and helping identify the most appropriate people we should be talking with as well. They know their residents too. So, but yeah, we've done all kinds of different things to engage. So.
Yeah, you made me think too, just about sharing the street with the Maplewood Library there too. I'm sure there's some folks there who would have thoughts and connections probably too. Great.
I'm not sure if it came out in my intro there, but it's important to note for our community members that are listening right now that these gates would only be closed during school hours. All else, except for special events, which we've already discussed, we need to further define. Those gates would be open for the community to traverse as they do now.
Thanks for that clarification, Chris. Any other questions or comments? The next step, do we have a time for returning to Maplewood Council, or at a future date at this point?
At this time, it is just a future date.
I think it's sort of up to us to come up with kind of the game plan of, collecting the info and then, coming back to them when appropriate, when we have more info.
Okay, great. Well, we'll work on that with this team. So, thank you. If it's okay to move on, we'll go over to policy batch A, which I think Roxana is presenting.
Yes, so for item 3.04 policy batch A, we've divided the policies into two batches. Many of these have been presented to the board a couple times before. So the first batch is just all of the items that were adopted as presented that we had really no further discussion on, but because we have not voted on them yet, they're there again in case anyone has comments on that particular batch.
Thanks for that clarification. So any questions on the adopt as presented 3.04 policy batch? Great.
So the second batch, we did have discussion about, and we discussed modifications. And so we are bringing back for you the policies with the modifications that were suggested for further discussion. We're not voting on these tonight to give you an opportunity to discuss, and they'll be presented for your vote in December if folks agree with the modifications. I'm going to talk about two that I worked on, and then I'll invite Chris and Vince to talk to you about theirs. So The two that Kat and I amended were BBFA, which is about board member conflict of interest, and GBCA, which is staff member conflict of interest. MSBA revised those policies, but they failed to include an amount. They suggested that the board adopt an amount. We already have amounts in our existing policy, so we've simply brought our existing amounts over into the new policy.
And that's also creating consistency between board and staff amounts, right?
They are different amounts. They were different amounts in policy. The reason that they're different amounts is the staff amount is a little higher because the types of things that you might see would be like the offer to buy staff bagels. If you buy the whole staff bagels, it's going to be more than $100. So that's
Sure.
why there's a slight variance there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So Vince, I think you had a couple of these revisions. Do you want to talk about your revisions?
Sure, super exciting revisions on board policies, but important to get them right, of course. So I looked at policies around enrollment and tuition. I looked at DFI initially, and really DFI really talks a lot about the board's responsibility in setting tuitions, et cetera. Several years ago, I think the board, I think like many other districts in the region, modified their tuition policies to limit it to tuition being set as required by law. So to accommodate students from unaccredited districts, et cetera, maybe a little bit more narrow. Previously, it had been pretty broad. So I suggested, to continue to be focused on where we offer tuition opportunities in the community, and it's simply really just remove things that don't really apply to us, things that programs that we don't have. So it was just a cleaner policy. So it was mostly just a kind of more of a straightforward editing suggestion about removing programs that don't exist here. Like, for example, we don't have a K-8 district, we're a K-12 district, those kind of things. So mostly just editing. Everything that we kept in are things that we have that are required by law for us to keep as tuition options. So that was DFI. And then the other policy I looked at was JECA. The only suggestion that I had, and I ran this by our attorney and she concurred, it was around shared custody. There was some language that was suggested or proposed around the school's involvement in shared custody plans and getting parents to sign off on those. And our attorney has consistently advised us to be respectful and mindful of shared custody cases in our community, but to really allow the parents to we're not parties to the shared custody agreements. And so to really allow parents to kind of work through that and to kind of remove schools' direct involvement with enforcing or monitoring shared custody plans. Our sense is that it's more family friendly and respectful to allow people with shared custody to kind of navigate those waters themselves without interference from the school and bringing us as a party of enforcing those shared custody plans. So we simply suggested removing that language and our attorney wholeheartedly concurred. So those are just the two policies that I looked at.
Chris, do you want to talk about DJF?
Yes, I'll take a moment to do that. So policy DJF is our purchasing policy. And you might remember that policy number might sound familiar as it appears quite regularly as MSBA takes in input from their members from around the state. DJF tends to, they recommend that it change from time to time. So I believe it was last April that you approved the last version of DJF, which put in place a statement that required any purchase outside of the budget that would approach $50,000 or that would total $50,000 required board approval. The recommended change to this most current version in the 2020A batch was removing that altogether, the dollar amount figure altogether, and bringing it to any unbudgeted purchase would be board approved. So that concerned me because if you use the strictest interpretation of that, if our high school staff left off the dry erase markers from their budget, I might have to bring that back to you for approval prior to purchase. And that, I know that that's taking that to an extreme level. So I chose to interpret it as what the spirit of that policy was intended to do. And I called our MSBA attorneys and basically just said, hey, I feel like our internal controls, our processes and procedures, as well as our board policies, as those other things are guided by our policies, are completely sufficient to leave that policy as it currently exists on the books right now, which is any unbudgeted purchase of $50,000 is required for the board to approve. So some assurances that you have that that is actually happening. Number one, we can't have a negative fund balance per state statute. So any purchase that would take us outside of what we had budgeted, we would have to bring back for you in a budget amendment anyway. We've also left in place as part of our procedures any purchases, regardless of whether they were budgeted or not, for you to approve, and those currently exist in our consent agenda. So between those two things and the fact that you all need to approve construction projects, I feel like our current DJF is sufficient and that we do not need to risk the extreme interpretation of the removal of that $50,000 limitation.
Those are the amended policies, if you have any other questions or discussion.
All very straightforward. Thank you for making those edits. And as you mentioned, the adopt is presented, we'll vote on this evening, and the other 5 just detailed now, we'll vote on in December. Great. We'll move into admin communication then, and our COVID-19 data update.
Right, so I will go ahead and give you the COVID-19 data update. As you're all aware, the numbers in our area are going exactly in the wrong direction. And so I don't really have any good news to report to you tonight. I will make some commentary as we go. So these are the big numbers that you've been seeing in the news. You know that case rates in Missouri as a whole and in the region are going up. I have been in very close communication with our health department officials and remain in close communication with them. They are extremely concerned about the case rates. The mask mandates in St. Louis and St. Louis County, I don't know if you saw the news headlines today, are working somewhat. However, regionally, we don't have mask mandates. And so, you know, that's not helping us. And so the message continues to be, to get a handle on this, every individual has to practice the same safety guidelines that we keep talking about, you know, having in place and having in place tightly in schools. And so I know that there is a lot of collaboration happening regionally among health departments. There's a lot of collaborative work that is going on behind the scenes as folks work desperately to get folks on the same page to try to get ahead of this thing. But the numbers are not looking good. The transmission rate, again, which is, we want that number to be 1 or lower. Last week, when I sent the report to you in our county, it was 1.17. You can see that that has increased to 1.23. So again, going in the wrong direction. I leave this slide on here all the time because it helps us remember kind of what we're looking at. I will talk to you about case rates, and I do want to point out, and I do have a community member that has been in conversation with me, so let me just say this so that folks understand. That top number, which is about case rates, is case rates per 100,000 in the past 14 days. I do calculate that rate, and we are well above the highest risk category of 200. When I show you the next slide, the county reports that based on the Harvard calculation, which is the daily rate per 100,000. And just for comparison's sake, we want that number to be less than 25. And you can see that we are well over 25. And for the first time that I'm reporting, our central corridor numbers are also quite high. So a lot of the new case rate growth has been in the central corridor. It's still still lower than many of the other corridors, but you can see some pretty exponential growth here closer to home for us. The positivity rate is also gone up. The positivity rate when last I reported to you for our county was a 10.8/18.8, with the unduplicated number being around 31.9. So you can see that the positivity rate is up. I can tell you that is impacted somewhat also by the fact that there was, for whatever reason, less testing that happened last week than the week prior. So we have higher case rates and slightly lower testing in the county. Our zip code data has also changed. So when I reported to you last week, we had 62 cases in the 63117 zip code and 55 in the 63143. So you can see that our local numbers are up slightly as well. When we look at our school age case rates, they also went up in the last week. Remember, we had a dip down. We were very hopeful a few weeks ago. Those rates have gone up slightly again. The highest increase continues to be, and you can see that a little better on this slide, among the 15 to 19-year-olds. And again, I'll remind the board that does include 18 and 19-year-olds that are on our local college campuses, which somewhat skew those numbers. But you'll also see slight upticks for 10 to 14-year-olds and 5 to 9-year-olds. Within our boundaries, we have had at least one case in each of the age bands for last week. Our actual numbers are up by 9 new cases this week. Our staff counts were 6 when last I reported, so we're up to 9 at this point, and you can kind of see how that falls out. I do think it's important to point out to the board, and I'll talk just a little bit about some other information I've had from the health officials this week, and I will tell you this every time we say it. We have had 0 transmissions occur because of interactions in our workplace. We want to keep that at 0. We are practicing the strictest safety mitigation measures. Part of that safety mitigation measure is an aggressive quarantine routine that we do when we hear of close contact with positive cases. And that is represented in this particular staff count. We are not currently reporting student quarantines because when we have students on campus, it is for those very specialized small group interventions. However, I will tell you that parents are reporting cases to us of students even that are in all virtual learning, and we are also helping with the contact tracing for those students as well, because our position is our students are our responsibility, and if we can keep the community safer, we're going to do that. And so I'd like to give a shout out to the contact tracing team, who has been doing a really great job, and in many cases working into the evenings to make sure that we're keeping our families safe throughout our attendance areas. And so congratulations to Vince and his team, who've really been helping the HR team. We've also instituted a weekly meeting to make sure that those procedures are very tight and can continue. I think the positive thing that I would like to say at the end of this report is we are starting now to get some really good data about what transmission rates look like in schools, which we have not had before. There have been 2 very large scale mega studies that have been released through the CDC. We have local studies looking both at data that's being turned in from schools that are in session and in hybrid session, comparing that against those mega studies. The CDC has accepted that study, and so our local Missouri schools will be presenting data that will be helpful in that. We're also looking at the contact tracing data anecdotally to figure out where transmission is happening in schools, and that's really good news for us because one of the couple strategies. So in talking to Spring Schmidt today, you know, one of the community strategies is to restrict movement, but the school-based strategy that we are really regionally trying to work on is this incredible precision with our mitigation strategies on site, which I thank the board for allowing us to purchase all of the plexiglass that we've purchased, all of the PPE that we've purchased, being able to move around furniture. And so and you'll hear some of that in the presentations from the principals. We have taken what we now know to heart. And I do want to assure you that all of the things that we're learning are being implemented in our spaces. The regional case rates are extremely high, but I do want you to know we are well prepared for when those case rates begin to decline, and be ready for a reentry to school. And so that's part of why I have the principals here tonight to talk to you about what that looks like when we believe community conditions are ready for that. Any questions about the data? Sorry, I don't have better news to share on that front. Can I just say this too? I think it's important, and kind of a community service announcement, which is if we're going to get students back to school, it is critically important that every individual and every citizen continue to practice social distancing, wear masks, do the things at home, hand washing, all of the things that we would say are important safety considerations at school. We have to now do them in all of the walks of life, because that's what it's going to take to get that R naught factor under 1.
Yeah, thanks for reiterating that, Roxana. I would echo that. It's not too late to pick up a new healthy habit if you've let your guard down a little bit. We've got to recommit to all the levels, to all the layers of protection as a community. So, okay. So Dr. Hebenstreit, thanks for joining us this evening as well, and turn it over for your update.
Share my screen here. Okay. Good evening. As Roxana said, myself and Dr. Thompson are here tonight to share with you what our plans look like for reentry. Stay safe, stay well, stay in school has really become our tagline at ECC that's driving our plan for return to in-person learning. To that end, we've met continuously with building and district administrators to apprise ourselves of the best information in regards to safety, as well as teaching and learning practices in a blended environment that are optimal for student learning. Let's see if I can, sorry. Okay, so planning for a safe reentry. As I just mentioned, we've met with district administrators, other building level administrators, to really think carefully and inform ourselves about best practice in terms of safety and learning. I've also met with colleagues in the area of other preschool and K-2 schools to find out what they are doing and what their experience has been. And also, as a building administrator, we also participated in a district-wide review of the DESE approved virtual learning options as we were thinking about what we would be able to provide for our students. And I previously did not know a lot about virtual learning in the state of Missouri, so I certainly am more informed about that than I had been in the past. So when you look at the building level, the things that we have planned for, I wanted to let you know that as I was preparing this presentation, I was really thinking about what we did starting in June. So as you notice, the third element here, the third item I have is preschool team met with administrators to make comprehensive plans for reentry. I really have that in there because I wanted you to be confident that when we were thinking about bringing preschool on site, that we had a team of preschool teachers volunteering, and they committed themselves to figuring out a plan if preschool could resume. Obviously, as we know now, we're not able to open our preschool, and those teachers are partnering with our K-1-2 staff. So I just wanted to let you know why I have that in there. So again, as I mentioned, starting in June, we met as an admin team, which was comprised of my assistant principal, Mrs. Cobb, my school nurse, my secretaries, my counselor, and my social worker. And we met in order to think through our entire school day, because that's the team that's really involved in planning for the arrival of students, planning for, lunch and recess and supervision, and then planning for the departure of our students. So we started working then on what it would look like if we were bringing all our students back. We have continued to meet, and we've continued to revise our plans, as we have done in all of these elements I'm going to talk about, because when we were meeting in June, we were thinking we were coming back 5 days a week with all of our students. As things changed, we had to go back to our planning, and we had to think about what tier 2 would look like in a hybrid setting. And then we had to meet again, and we had to look at our plans in all of these areas and think about what would it look like in a tier 3 setting, both for students in an all virtual setting, as well as students in a tiered plan.
Cindy, your presentation is not forwarding. I don't know if.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can see it, and you. Okay. My apologies. Let me see if I can.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it didn't.
Oh, you know what I think happened when I went into the present mode? Would it be okay if I stayed in this mode? Can you see this?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, my apologies. So what I was saying, we've had to continue to plan. It's somewhat like the first 3 weeks of school for the last 16 weeks. We keep being responsive to the situation as it changes. So we've met also in grade level teams. We started that over the summer, considering what online learning possibilities would be, what a schedule might look like. Again, as I've mentioned, as we've continued to change, the situation has continued to change. We've continued to meet not only with grade level reps, but our full grade level teams on a weekly basis. We met with the content specialists over the summer, along with Rachel Ward, who was instrumental in helping us figure out what our parameters were and offering some scheduling that might work. As we now are thinking about returning in a hybrid tier 2 setting, again, we've met with Rachel, and we've developed plans for our specialists to provide the art, music, PE, and seed to table in a virtual format. That's important to note, because our specialists were concerned in our original plan where they would be going to every class and presenting their specials in the class. And they were very concerned about their safety and having contact with all the children. So as we're thinking about coming back in the hybrid setting, they will be on site, but they will be doing their lessons virtually, and children will either be receiving their specials through asynchronous or it'll be really a blend of synchronous and asynchronous learning. We have been meeting with our blended learning tech coaches since the summer. We've met at the district level, and then we meet at the building level. Those teachers are helping the classroom teachers think about blended learning in our current setting that we're in. And now we're beginning the conversation, what would blended learning look like as we move into a tier 2 setting and have children on site? And we're actually really excited about that. And we're leaning into the possibilities of being able to work live with children and having them in front of us as they work on their Chromebooks, so they understand how to better navigate the system. Right now, it's very challenging because the teachers are trying to teach the children how to use different things online when they can't see what the child is seeing on their screen. And so the opportunity to work with them live is very exciting. And we think that that will just improve their asynchronous or synchronous experience in terms of working with technology. And so my blended learning coaches, again, continue to meet with them, meet with our teachers in our grade level meetings. Okay, so our thinking about safety really has multiple components. The first one, when we're thinking about coming back on site with children, is reduced capacity, which is why we're looking at hybrid format. We will have cohorting, which means there won't be commingling of students. Children will be in their classroom for their learning. They will be in their classroom for their lunch. And we have safety protocols in place for the cleaning that will happen while the children are outside at recess. We have identified areas outside, so a class will only play in an identified area, and then they'll rotate each day to a different area, so they're not in the same play space throughout the course of a week. The children will be wearing masks. The staff will be wearing masks. We will have social distancing in place. There are plexiglass barriers throughout the spaces, and we have worked very hard to develop processes and protocols to ensure that we have efficient contact tracing. And that's designed, or that the rationale behind that is, if we have an efficient process, we're going to minimize the number of students or staff that would have to be quarantined if we have an effective process in place. So again, I mentioned we'll be wearing masks. Children will wear them on the bus. They'll wear them in the halls and throughout the day when inside their classroom and inside the school. We will have signs reminding staff to stay 6 feet apart. Signs will be posted. When we're moving the children through the building, 6 feet apart might be a bit challenging, but they will have their mask on, and we're going to use, the arm length of distance when they're moving from inside to outside the building, basically in lines. And so the mask with that type of distancing with the children, we feel will be safe. Most importantly, we want to remind the adults to have masks on and to stay 6 feet apart. So if there are multiple adults in a classroom, such as the classroom teacher and possibly a teaching assistant, we're going to make sure that they stay 6 feet apart and that they have their masks on. The respiratory etiquette, there will be direct teaching and modeling for the children before they come on site, with reminders when they are on site as well. The staff and parents will be doing daily health screenings. Right now, we have children coming on site for Tier 2 interventions in a Tier 3 setting. The parents have been very cooperative. The teacher, when they go out to meet the children and get them out of the car, they're showing the screening to the parents and asking the parents to verify that none of these items apply to their students. We have had parents call in and say, my child can't come today. They have a cough. So parents, we have found so far, in the 22 children I believe that we have on site right now, they have been extremely responsive and they've taken that health screening very seriously. We have consistent cleaning practices. That's one of the elements that is critical to ensuring the safety of all. And I worked with my staff and Mike Whelan to get a cleaning protocol sheet approved, and I'll show that to you in the pictures. But we have a cleaning sheet outside of every single classroom and every single space that the custodians are checking off once they have performed the cleaning. It sends that message that the cleaning is important and my custodial staff is taking it seriously. And I believe they are now implementing that throughout the district. So when you come into the building, we have the hand sanitizing station. We have the directional arrows for traffic flow throughout the building. We're trying to practice that right now as adults. I'm trying to remind myself to pay attention which side of the hall I'm on, because I always tend to have a purpose when I'm out in the hallway and move pretty quickly. So I'm trying to train myself to pay attention to those directional arrows. So as you can see on the left there, the cleaning schedule that I mentioned, it's posted outside of all the spaces, and you can see the writing on there. The custodial staff has been extremely conscientious about marking that because they know that messaging is really important to the staff and the students to make sure everyone feels safe. In every single classroom, we have the hand sanitizer. We have the the bucket, if you will, of the wipes that are, I believe the Performex would be the proper name of the product. And it's to ensure that the germs, any COVID germs that might be near, will be killed. We've done an audit of all the spaces, any space missing, either the hand sanitizer, the wipes, and there's also rubber gloves there along with a package of PPE. We've made sure that we are getting those items to those spaces. We prioritize the spaces that children and staff are actually using now. The picture on the right, that's a collared face shield. Nurse Michelle has approved those so that when our teachers are sitting behind the plexiglass teaching the children, they can have that clear face shield on and don't have to have the mask, so children can see the teacher's mouth, which is really important for our young children, especially in terms of their literacy instruction. This is the guided reading table. It's very hard to see, but the way they've set the plexiglass up, there are two areas for the children to sit on either end of the table. That middle stool should really not be there. And the middle section comes all the way out. And as you can see, our teacher there, Miss Gincola, she has all of her teaching tools set up, and she'll be able to teach those two children at the table with plexiglass surrounding herself and the children. Oh, why is this not moving? Here we go. And this is an example of how we have set up the classrooms. The desks are spaced 6 feet apart. The children are sitting on both ends. And though you can't see it, there's plexiglass enclosing each of the areas where the children are sitting, and they're fastened. You might be able to see the fasteners at the bottom. So the plexiglass is adhered to the table and is stable. Okay, now I did want to just share this with you because we actually have a lot of teachers at ECC that are teaching from the school. And I just wanted to show the innovation that our teachers have come up with to make their day-long teaching online doable. And as you can see, we have teachers standing who have created interesting ways to work at the computer. You can see Mr. Mark's creation there. He wasn't in the room at the time, but he has created an area that is conducive to his comfort while he is teaching throughout the day. And then you can see Mr. Hankley teaching from the table, but they've set up different little structures so that the computers can be higher and they can have greater comfort while they're teaching online. I also wanted to show that we have plexiglass in the areas where teachers have an opportunity to eat. They can certainly eat outside, or they could eat in their room. They have the proper cleaning equipment to clean up after themselves, whether they're in the teacher's lounge or in their classroom. And then more specifically, as we're thinking about returning in a tier 2 setting, planning, learning, attendance, and playing. In the first column, the most important aspect there is that we want to optimize instructional flow through strong planning and the learning, what we've learned from our experience this far. We want that to inform our tier 2 instruction. Grade levels will continue to meet and plan for blended learning across home and school. We will maintain the teacher partner structure where the preschool staff and other staff members are partnered with the K-1-2 teacher to optimize those small group and one-on-one sessions that are crucial to our youngest learners. We'll have ongoing assessment to ensure our instruction is on target and fostering student growth. We've just finished our first report cards, our first round of report cards, and the assessments are showing us that our students are making progress. And in any areas that they're not, we're meeting and talking about what else can we do. We're working with our instructional coaches to support our thinking as well in both math and literacy. Chromebooks will be utilized in class at home when we're in Tier 2. And as I mentioned before, we're very excited about the opportunity to actually teach children some of the strategies with the Chromebooks when they're actually in front of us, which should optimize their use of it in the home setting. Students at this point will attend Monday and Thursday or Tuesday, Friday. I will be asking district administration to consider allowing the teachers to create more balanced classes. Doing it by last name really will not create balanced classes. And we feel like the teachers know their children best, and we would like them to have the opportunity to develop the A group and B group based on the learning needs of the students. And then finally, our meals, as I've already mentioned, will be in class. I've already mentioned that specials will be virtual, even though the teachers will be on site, and that in recess, we will be cohorting just as we do in the classroom, and there will not be any commingling. Each classroom at ECC has a sink for drink breaks and hand washing, which will really help us ensure that hand hygiene that's so important. So what questions do you have?
Appreciate the constant evolution of this plan, Dr. Hubenstreit and the ECC team, and clear that you're deploying all the tools at your disposal for the safe return of students. Thanks.
Thank you. And we appreciate the board support and district administration supporting us in this effort.
Guess we can move over to the elementary and Dr. Thompson.
Hi there, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm going to pull my presentation up for you here. It's good to see everyone tonight. At some point, we'll get to shake hands and meet each other. It's been quite the start, but I've felt the support from our community for sure, and from you guys as well. From my colleagues at the central office level and at the building level has been fantastic, and what's been a very unique start to this really exciting position that I'm very proud to be part of. Just a little bit about where we have started here. A lot of my first opportunities with the district began in April and in May, joining in on the district level meetings, just getting some of that same guidance, getting aligned in those common expectations. And again, like Cindy said, really going full steam ahead with planning for Tier 1 instruction with all students in place, and then even with the idea of Tier 2, and then certainly pivoting into planning for virtual instruction. A lot of my initial work too has been working on meeting my staff and building relationships with them, learning about the systems that we currently have in place here. Because with all of the changes that are required, it's got to learn from the inside out a little bit. So trying to research some of that historical context. We began the process in June at the administrative level, taking a look at what our previous schedules were and taking into account those mitigating factors and put those into, try to just match it up, right? Like, where are we? What are we currently doing for a schedule? What systems do we currently have in place for arrival and dismissal? What does lunch look like? And then what do we need in place to make sure that we have distance, that we make sure that we have the space and the distance that we are needing throughout that. Part of what I've done over the summer as well is developed a principal advisory council. So you hear me say the word PAC, our PAC team a lot. That is a group who I invited and said, I'm going to need you to be a conduit of information, especially since I was asking folks to work in the summer a little bit and brainstorm and plan there, but to be able to share out and represent each of the grade level teams and other staff who they support and represent, just to be able to share, get that information, and bring it back to the table for conversation. A lot of what I have been doing is offering through our process drafts, and you'll hear my staff, they'll tell you that I always ask them to poke holes in the drafts. So I give them ideas, give them options, now poke holes in it, tell me what we've missed, tell us what we're not thinking about yet, give us some other ideas, some other suggestions. And that's been really where we've been from day one, working through some of those changes. Obviously working very closely with Nurse Catherine Whitehouse, who is just fantastic and is our lead contact tracer. Thank you, Vince, for all of the things you're doing to support her. In what we're thinking about, we're starting kind of that backwards design, that teacher mentality, right? Of what would get us to a quarantine or an unsafe situation. Let's use those things and plan to prevent them. That's the process that we went through when we think about distance. So then what do we need to have in the classroom? Well, we don't want any tables to get close to each other. So we've got Catherine in the space, measuring out, taping down, making sure that we have the distance that we're wanting there. And again, just regularly seeking feedback from my colleagues at the building and the district level, and then from other folks around the district, around the region as well, with what they're doing. Regularly getting feedback from our students. We had some team meetings with our students as well. How are things going with the virtual world? From our parent survey that we did a few weeks back, just checking in with them, getting feedback from them. And then again, just regular communication at the team, grade level team meetings, our blended learning team, and again with that PAC team as well. And we actually also have a group of our virtual academy teachers who we meet with on a weekly basis, just checking in with them and getting their input as well. Certainly looking at the different recommended layers of protection, they're all in place in our building now, and will be as we are bringing students on campus for in-person interventions, and then looking at tier 2 as well in the future, whenever that may be. Masks certainly are expected in the building of all staff, all students, all day, with the only exception being the meals. Hand hygiene, we also have the hand sanitizing stations at each door of entrance and at each classroom as well. Our students who have been coming in, they're very familiar now with this process. Up they go, get their hands cleaned, and they know to do that on their way out as well in any classroom that they're entering. We are talking about which doors would need to be propped to minimize those touch points. And I know Mike is working with us to get some bottle filler stations as well to eliminate, again, those contact points, those touch points at the water fountains. I'll show you a picture in just a minute, but we are pre-teaching the respiratory etiquette, the mini lessons. It's all going to be about modeling and just making it the norm for us. I've touched base with some of my colleagues who currently have 100% students in school, and I'm asking about the mask wearing and the respiratory etiquette and how's that going for you. And everything that I've heard from folks is kids are wearing it. It's not been a problem. They may start to dribble down their nose a little bit, and quick reminders are helping students. And you'll see in my pictures here in just a minute, social distancing. We have some hallway footprints, and we chose the footprints with our age kiddos, just find your feet. So they've moved to the spot on the floor and find their footprints, which are safely distanced at 6 feet apart. We are using the superhero language as well, like Dr. Hebenstreit said, making sure that distance maintains in the hallway. It's a little bit tougher when we're moving in the hallway, but the amount of time that we're spending in that close proximity when we're moving from one spot to the next is another one of those layers of protection that we have in place there. We do have plexiglass throughout all of our learning spaces. We're really maximizing every space in the building right now, from the gym to the cafeteria to the library and the classrooms and our pods as well. Those are being used for intervention spaces now and will be also for our tier 2 instruction. Our cleaning processes are in place, just as Cindy said. We currently have the check sheets in place for us to have that visual on what's happening in each classroom, a set schedule for those common spaces, and then their cleaning will happen right after lunch and then each evening as well. And again, district protocol with our staff daily screens. We're asking our families to do that screen as well and actually have visuals. We have a big poster that's going to be up on both Princeton side and Glade Circle that has the health check. If your child has, with all of the different potential symptoms, just keep it on moving, just keep on driving. So we know that there are some experiences throughout our day that we cannot perfect, the distancing and the masks and all of the pieces, you know, with the crowd and all. So we are, as we talk about the Swiss cheese of the different layers of protection, I know you hear that from Roxana a lot, just looking through these different parts of the day where those questions come up around how we are maintaining that safety, arrival and dismissal. We certainly would not be able to have 225 students land in 2 doors at the same exact time. So one thing that we put in place was to stagger our arrival by asking our 3rd and 5th grade families to arrive slightly earlier than our 4th and 6th grade families, just to help us get folks in the building without a long line, knowing that they're going to be pumping in when they walk into the doors. And then also working to get our 5th and 6th grade kiddos to the back of the building to come up those back steps when we can, so that we can, again, keep working on spacing out our entrances. We do have traffic patterns set in the hallway, similar to what you saw from the ECC, one-way patterns when we can, and when we can't, we have them on both on the opposite sides of the hall, so we have plenty of distance there. It is reduced capacity on the bus, and there will be assigned seats on the bus, so any family members would be able to sit closer together. And then again, just like I said, reduced capacity will help us maintain that distance as well. Breakfast, lunch, and recess, I know are a lot of questions as well. Meals in the classroom bring up a lot of questions. So to reduce that risk as much as possible, I didn't add this, but I am working to work with food service on how we might be able to have kids take their next morning's breakfast home with them. So that is one reduced meal in the building. So they can have that before they get to us. During the actual lunchtime though, lunch will be in the classrooms, not in the cafeteria. Our staff our supervision staff, that won't be the classroom teachers. At that point, they'll be in lunch in a different space in the building. But our supervising staff will have a face shield on during that time and maintain their distance. Actually, to be outside of the door, just right in the doorway away from the students who are unmasked at that time. To be outside when possible during this eating unmasked time, we're certainly looking to do that. And then we also have those dedicated recess assignments where students will have different spaces and rotate around, again, reducing that commingling experience. Our specials at this time are going to happen in the classroom on our regular rotating basis. And our PE and our seat to table is going to be outside when possible. There won't be any group shared supplies with that. We've already got quite a bit in action here. In our building, we have been serving students in the intervention experience, working to really support and fill in any academic and social emotional gaps that some of our students are having. And so we actually also did our 3rd grade visits, which were a ton of fun for our building. And for Nurse Catherine, as you can see here, she did her mask wearing lesson, just practiced it with them each day. And that would be something that we would continue and, make sure happens in each space. Just a picture of our hand sanitizing stations, helping students see to step up, and those visual reminders are helpful. These are the footprints that we ask our students to find, and it really, they help a lot just to help them kind of see the distance that they're needing, and you can see the traffic pattern with that as well. Our cleaning processes are at each door. So our teachers are signing in and out each day. Anytime that there's a classroom in their space, the student has an assigned seat. Anytime that they may be, if I pop in to have a conversation with them, we're all signing in as part of our contact tracing. We want to know who's where and when. And then similar to the cleaning process, just that visual again is that reassurance for us, for our staff in particular, to make sure that those spaces are being taken care of. When we talk about contact tracing, this has certainly been a new learning phase for all of us. I know understanding public health as a school administrator has been a new something for my to-do list. But the contact tracing is, it seems, like a small piece, but to really make it efficient, I think it's really important to have these established and practiced protocols and processes in place. And that's how we're getting into the building, how we're documenting who is where, how we know when students are with one another, having those things in place, practicing it with our staff, training them, observing and monitoring that. We are often around the space and just making sure that our staff are keeping the distance that they need. And then again, those protocols we've reviewed with our staff a number of times just to give them, again, that reassurance that there is a flow chart of decision making from information to decision that is doesn't fall on the shoulders of any one person, that it is a partnership process, and making sure that we're getting the facts to that process. I just wanted to give you a little glimpse. We did not have our plexiglass in our classrooms at the time of this submission. That they're all in now. I'm certainly would love to be able to send those pictures to you. Actually, several of our teachers have said, now it finally makes sense. Now I finally feel it and experience what that's going to look like. So we do have, if you can see the upper left classroom there, that would be a roster size of 13. And at our reduced capacity tier 2 model, that will be 6 kids one day and 7 kids the next day. So certainly spaced out in that model. And then the plexiglass that is shaped around the trapezoid table from there. The middle picture there, just wanted to give you a glimpse, is one of our 5th grade classrooms that has at this time a roster size of 24 students. So it is a little bit closer from seat to seat, only by about a foot. But again, we have that additional measure of the plexiglass protecting students. And then again, with our plexiglass that is installed, this is, it allows the teacher to be on the other side of it and working closely with students in those intervention spaces. So we have these T-shape plexiglass in our small group tables where our teachers are supporting students as well. So a little bit more just what learning will look like in our hybrid model. Understanding that that's 50% capacity, certainly reduced capacity for our classrooms. Students will attend some similar to what Dr. Hevenstreit said, Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. I'll talk a little bit more about Wednesdays in a minute, but really wanting to work to keep students engaged that entire time, knowing that they're not going to be, in primary contact with their teacher all 5 days. So as we're thinking through that instruction, we're using It's Learning, the model, our learning management system very well. Our classroom teachers have done such a heavy lift on implementing that very well. And I'm so impressed by them, the things that they're picking up, and to engage students in that two-way interaction and then engagement, and to be able to monitor the student learning that's going on right now. So as we would move into hybrid, students who are home, students who are in class would be getting the same content through that same learning management system, no matter whether they're at home or at school, to really help plan, thinking through planning for a week. And then students would, no matter where they are, engage in that same, like I said, content and that same access point. Our in-person learning is going to be a blend of technology, small groups, and those classroom discussions. The teacher planning, continuing with that, when students are in person, they're going to be able to pull their small groups. They're doing, again, such a phenomenal job of pulling groups now virtually, being able to work with students in small groups in reading and writing and in math specifically right now on a weekly basis. And that's something that is an expectation pre-COVID and now here in Tier 3 instruction, and we'll certainly maintain in Tier 2. Having students in person with us will give us an additional opportunity to send home those hands-on materials as well. We've been doing, in my opinion, a great job of making sure that to offer those to our families right now. But when we have our students with us, we'll be able to hand them their book club books, any kind of math manipulatives they may need, and then just any other, writer's notebooks, any other of those materials that are, not always replicated on a Chromebook. Their at-home learning days, students are still going to log into Zoom for a live class meeting. That's one thing that we keep talking about. How do we keep our students connected with us? We don't want them to feel like it's an off day, just an at-home learning day. And really wanting to make sure to build that independence now for students so that when they do have that time at home and the teachers aren't right there with them, that they are going to be able to work through and stay engaged and interacting in a positive way. Again, our students are going to return to a rotating special schedule. So however that lands, Monday is not always going to be the same specials. So they'll be able to rotate through, and at some point they'll be able to be in person, and some points they'll be on Zoom as well. Interventions are still going to take place. Those are what we led with in getting students back on campus. So those interventions are still going to take place on Zoom, whether the student is at home or if the student's in person with us. We're going to do that same time, keep that collaborative learning going, and connect kids to those supports that they're needing. And then again, our support staff are going to provide office hours and targeted support for engagement for the students who are at home. So that kind of red flag time when I'm struggling with my Chromebook or I don't know where to get started, we do have support staff in place who are going to be able to kind of answer that call for kids who are at home at that time. That's what I got for you. I will answer any questions that I can. We're excited to continue to bring our students in on campus slowly, a little bit at a time right now. The impact that is having is significant. We're being uber safe about it. Again, on a very small scale. I'm sure Vince is going to talk about this as he speaks to our interventions, but it's having a certain impact, an absolute impact, and just a small scale at this point. So thank you again for your support and your regular encouragement, and I can answer any questions.
Again, thanks for the thoroughness, and appreciate the intense work that you and your team are doing.
Yes, thank you.
I think our next agenda item is a buildings and grounds update. Mr. Whelan.
Thank you very much. The presentation I'm going to work on tonight for you or present are the following 4 areas. Maintenance and custodial will be the first. Then we'll transition to transportation. Then do our COVID-19 preparations, excuse me, for student reentry. And then lastly, the construction, a real brief construction update. Under maintenance and custodial, maintenance department continues to complete their work orders and have been working with each of the schools and making minor room modifications to implement social distancing in classrooms and office spaces. The installation of automatic water bottle fillers has been delayed further until the end of November, which is in a week or so, or beginning of December. Though we've finally received, or the contractors received, all the necessary parts, there has been an outbreak of COVID-19 within their firm, necessitating quarantine of their staff. But once installed, there will be 1 water bottle filler on each floor in all schools. Our custodial crews continue to practice each day their sanitation protocols in order to be fully prepared when staff and students return. Training has been conducted by the vendor in the proper use of the electrostatic sprayers. All sanitation supplies have been now received and are stocked at each school. In transportation, all drivers are conducting drives through the district each week in order to work on their driving skills and become proficient with daily sanitation protocols of their buses. And that's extremely important. I do need to say, my observation with your support staff, they are taking their responsibilities extremely serious. And it's, for me, it's very heartwarming. Transportation runs are going to begin shortly for the intervention students needing transportation. I believe, if I'm not wrong, it'll be December 3rd. I think that's when it is. For some COVID-19 preparations, the plexiglass screens continue to be installed throughout the district. We're pretty much, well, we are finished at the elementary. We've got just a few locations at ECC and they'll be complete. Teacher furniture has been taken care of, and the areas at the high school and middle school that have some intervention students in, those have been addressed. And I would think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, everything will be installed in all buildings, in all classrooms, all instructional spaces by winter break. Give just a real brief construction update. WTI projects, that's the contractor doing some HVAC, the tuck pointing and such. The HVAC rooftop unit replacements are proceeding at the elementary and the high school facilities. All 3 Maplewood Richmond Heights schools are receiving brand new DDC HVAC controls within these projects. IFS, who is the subcontractor for WTI, it's the HVAC contractor, assisted us in applying for, and we received an Ameren, Missouri Biz Savers incentive offer in the amount of $29,210. And I always smile when it breaks it down to cents. So we don't want to forget the 34 cents that we also received. We also subsequently applied for and can receive an additional 15% award based upon the successful completion of the rooftop project. We're working very closely with IFS to complete the work in the time frame to receive that incentive. And then, as I had stated previous update, the window replacement at the high school and middle school will start in May of 21, concluding in August this coming summer. Itner projects. When I wrote this and presented it last Friday, we had anticipated that the 2 modular trailers sections would be moved from the parking lot at the early childhood up to its future home. Well, as we know, it rained like heck on Saturday. And so late Sunday, in talking with the contractor, we made the decision we're going to have to let it wait for a few days to try to dry out. And so earlier last week, we received the results of a cylinder brake test for the concrete for all the piers. It passed. So as I say, we had it originally scheduled for the 16th. I am pleased to report that earlier this morning and into the afternoon, both modular trailers were successfully danced around with the special equipment they brought in to go around the barn, and they are now in place. Hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow, they'll all be tied down and ready for the rest of the work for that project to be completed. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions?
Thank you.
Appreciate the thoroughness. Interventions update from Vince Estrada.
Good evening, everybody. Happy to, I feel like I'm just a spokesperson for the people doing the real work on the interventions, to be honest with you, but I'm happy to share, and I know there's a lot of interest in what we're doing there. What I often do is just update previous presentation. So this is an update from the initial presentation I shared with the board on-campus interventions, making a case for it initially. And so those slides still exist. What I thought I would do, since it's 9 p.m., is actually, rather than review all those slides, is just jump into what's been happening as we've implemented on-campus intervention and what the kind of future looks like. So how many people we've been serving and how it's going to kind of play out. So, so I wanted to start with just kind of a more macro district overview and just to remind the community that the school board support is unconditional and extremely important here. The investment the board has made in staffing, allowing us to add teaching assistants to really expand on-campus intervention is critically important, and we've got those folks in place. Trusting in our collaborative site-based management so our teams, at the building levels can kind of adjust and bring in kids as they see needed based on good data, and just the permission and support to expand services as needed, particularly when we made the decision to go till January. And that was really helpful to be able to expand those services, recognizing that the need would increase. The staffing has changed. I think the Q1, as we kind of dipped our toe in the water of on-campus interventions, was somewhat, the people that kind of were the first adopters of that were people that were highly interested and sort of volunteered to kind of experiment with the on-campus interventions. As we moved into Q2, kind of all hands on deck. We're implementing more of a fair share model. And it's sort of that old phrase, many hands make light work. So we're bringing more gen ed teachers in to kind of not only expand our interventions, but to really create some more breadth and depth of the students that we're serving. The transportation support is critical. Mike mentioned that's been starting. We have done some dry runs, and we have actually started using buses to bring students on campus at all the buildings. I wanted to commend wholeheartedly Cindy Norton and her team, so flexible and so customer friendly. And so they've been working with the building principals and getting those lists in time to kind of create a bus list for the following week. And she's been customizing it and really working hard with our teams and is fully committed to getting these kids on campus. And I will tell you, for some students, they wouldn't be here otherwise. So I want to thank them for that and thank the board for allowing us to use transportation. And the other thing I always remind folks is the on-campus interventions does give us an opportunity to practice some of our protocols. I think all the things that we have in place around hand sanitizer and directional signs and spacing are great, but unless you have a chance to practice them, it'll be less effective when we return to in-person instruction. So the on-campus interventions have given both staff and students an opportunity to practice. Early Childhood Center, so they had the smallest group because really they had, Cindy and her team did a really brilliant job from the very beginning, embedding a lot of interventions into virtual distance learning, all the co-taught classrooms, and it was necessary given the age of those kids. All those classes being co-taught, embedded interventions throughout at the very beginning. But as the years progress, they are expanding their opportunities for kids to come on campus and using classroom teachers and interventionists. So they have grown that program a bit, expanded the days that they're offering it to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, expanding the times that the kids are on campus between 90 minutes to 180 minutes, using TAs to support them. A lot of times it's really helping these young learners be able to use their devices to be able to engage in the virtual distance learning. That's one of the things we've seen with a handful of kids in the kindergarten, first, second grade is their struggle with maintaining focus and being able to access the virtual distance learning experience. So we're trying to provide that support on site with some bus transportation as needed, and also continue to expand some of the virtual interventions. So all those things are kind of taking place in Q2, which started a couple weeks ago. At the elementary school, same. They're also increasing the sessions. They're allowing students to come to more one session as needed. We have some, students with high needs that are able to come 2, 3, 4 times a week for 60 to 90 minutes. They have added kind of reading supports on campus in person, where they initially started with math, now they're doing math and reading on campus. Again, expanding their times from 60 minutes up to 180 minutes. Also using bus transportation. They are going to, after Thanksgiving, going to expand some support for some of the PLP learners. Again, it's about allowing them to kind of be focused and able to engage in the virtual learning and to really broaden that pool. If you guys remember, our first kind of focus was on students that had interventions through special education, ELL, 504s, et cetera. But we're expanding it to more of the general education population as well, because kids struggle and need some support. Middle school came up with an interesting idea. They saw a group of kids beginning to struggle and fall behind, and they're kind of giving them a little bit of a boost by bringing them on campus for 3 to 4 hours for 2 weeks, with with intensive support to kind of get them back on track and back in the habits of being able to engage in their virtual distance learning. We've been able to use our TAs to support that work. It's been extremely beneficial. The students themselves have expressed great appreciation for that opportunity. Most of them, not 100%. I'd say 90%. But again, using the bus transportation has been helpful for a handful of those kids, and really creating that calendar. Like I know initially the middle school and high school was targeting Wednesdays, but now they're expanding interventions Monday through Friday. So they're using the Wednesdays, which is available for all interventions. And then they're using the morning slots and sometimes during the day to kind of help the kids access learning. High school, same, like they've really expanded their intervention services by bringing in the general education folks on site, and they have a robust schedule. There's always a content area specialist on site every day in the morning from 8 to 10 to support learners at all different grade levels. So it's really, they're maximizing their resources to really kind of cast a wide net to capture kids who are struggling. And teachers know, it's interesting in high school because they're a content area specialist, so they know who's struggling in their classes. So they're able to directly refer to invite them to come on campus, as opposed to having to go through a lengthy RTI. We're allowing teachers as part of the RTI to also invite students that they know are struggling in their classes. Again, the bus transportation has helped with a handful of the kids. I mean, the high school, middle school is located pretty well, so the older kids can get there often by themselves, but we do have a handful that do need a transportation. And again, they've expanded their calendar to Monday through Friday, not just to Wednesdays. And so here are our numbers. You can see that they're growing. Here's the ECC numbers. Again, I mentioned that they've expanded to 4 days a week and extended the length of their sessions. This past, the week of November 2nd was a short week for us. We were only in school, I think, 3 days. But last week they had 22 students on campus. Elementary school, of course, I had to mention that new student orientation for the third graders, but I didn't count those in the numbers. So they're serving upwards around 58 students in the full week. They have a really good system of, Angela mentioned kids signing in, teachers initially that they were there. So not only do we know invited, but we know we actually come. So there's 2 different lists: who was invited, who showed up. That's helpful in terms of the contact tracing. Again, they've expanded to 4 days a week, longer sessions, more meaningful interventions. Middle school, we talked about their program as well. Their numbers are continuing, like they went from 9 students the week of October 5th to 53 students this past week. And again, they are implementing, all the mitigating measures, distancing, the masks, all of it. And so when we have any contact tracing needs, we know where those kids are, what spaces they were in, and we can easily, kind of work on making sure we know who was where, when. And again, they've really include some general education interventions, and they're bringing groups on campus for 2 weeks at a time. And high school, similarly, they had a robust week last week. I think last week, the week of November 9th, was the first full week of having their gen ed teachers on campus, and you saw the big improvement, the big numbers jumping up in terms of kids getting some support there. Again, expanding their intervention time, not just to Wednesdays, but including the morning sessions Monday through Friday. And so that's it. That's the updates. Any questions?
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate that quantitative analysis of what's going on. Glad it's working.
It is.
Well.
It is. Yeah. I mean, and we'll continue to improve it, but it is working well. And on the board agenda, there's a kind of a link that anyone in the community can look at that link and kind of see what we're doing with on-campus interventions.
Great. We'll move ahead then with the civil engineering proposal. And I think Chris is presenting that.
Yes, these proposals are from CEDC, which is a partner of ITNR. And rather than going through ITNR and paying them directly, we are paying them directly. So these are the proposals for some of the site work and construction drawings that you heard Julie discussing this evening. CEDC is the firm that's been doing all of our site surveys and all of the engineering work that it takes to plan out new construction. So these are just to get square with our policies and make sure that our construction projects can move forward per policy. And you'll notice there's one for each of the buildings.
Any questions or clarifications necessary there for the board? Thank you, Chris. We will move forward then to board communication. A couple of items on the board calendar. I know that we've been informed of the rain date this weekend for the booster parade. So if folks are hardy and planning to participate in that, appreciate the work of that community organization to bring some energy to the community. Also acknowledging that we've got a few additional meetings on our calendar. Maria, did you want to touch base on some of those related to superintendent search?
Sure. Yeah. So it's time to do some heavy lifting, guys, around our superintendent search. I sent out the email, and we've got December 7th as a executive work session that we'll do with our partners at HYA to look at a slate. I'm asking you tonight if you can look for the evenings of December 10th and December 14th for board only, for the potential days to do interviews of our slate. And I'm also proposing we start those earlier and start at 5:30, so we can try to crank those out and not be do this at 10 o'clock at night. So if you can let me know if those 2 days work, I'll communicate with HYA. And then after that, I think it's a little premature to try to set the second round of dates because we have other heavy lifting we have to do in December. But we'll move pretty quickly once we make the decision on our finalists to get those on the calendar. So I'll follow up with Brandy, but if you guys can give me a thumbs up or let me know on those other 2 dates.
Thanks, Maria. Those dates all look good. Yeah, to me as well. And then I think the one other extra meeting in December is that December 3rd, I believe, is the first Thursday of the month work session. And I believe that is going to work to connect with the MAP Center to keep our Education Equity Committee conversation moving forward. As we said last time we were together, we wanted to review some of the feedback with Cynthia directly. So I have a tentative agreement from her to participate virtually with us that evening. Any other?
Can we just get meeting invites for the 10th and the 14th set out whenever is appropriate, please? That would help my schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, it works, but I have to see it.
Yeah, and we'll work with Kat probably to make sure that those get on the official agenda, even if we don't need all admin on deck for that. Thank you, Kat. Great. Well, we'll move forward then to the board election filings. If you can believe it, it's almost time for annual election season, and we will have 2 positions up for election in April of 2021. And as you know, candidate filing begins in December 15th, I believe, is the opening date. There are some updated protocols for anybody interested in filing. I think most notably is that folks could pick up paperwork as early as December 7th to fill out in advance and have just notarized and accepted on the 15th. It's all written up on the district website, all those protocols for folks to understand. Any questions or comments there? if we can get an update from Ralph on Joe's Place, anything that we need to be aware of. You are still on mute.
There is no really new updates on Joe's Place since we had our last meeting. So we do have one tentatively scheduled possibly in the first or the second week of December, but there's no new updates since our last meeting.
Thanks, Ralph.
Alrighty.
Everyone's slowed down a little bit, but it's appropriate right now. And then CBTF update, Wes, if you have anything for us.
Yeah, we've met twice since our last board meeting, monthly board meeting, and I believe the conversation now is centering around mostly around the idea of CAT leadership, compensation, if there's going to be any of that. Are we going to put together some sort of a tier of like a chairperson status or something of that sort? And really, right now, I think what you say, Roxanne, we're looking for feedback from the representatives on what kind of expectations such a designation might have, right?
You're on mute.
Darn it, I didn't think I would do that tonight, but yes, we are looking to see what is actually expectation for CAT leadership versus what might be personal preference or part of professional development. And so we're trying to get really clear as to what would a job description look like and how would that differ from other district leadership teams. And then if such a job description would occur, how would folks get that role? How would they leave that role? And I think we had a really good, robust conversation with the staff.
So more to come on that.
Great. Thanks for doing some additional work in between the meetings. With that, we can move on from board communications on to financials.
Good evening again, everyone. I'm hoping you can all hear me. I know you can see me now.
We can hear you.
All right, so I'll get right along with the October financial statements. The hour is getting late. I can assure you that the finances are, they remain strong. Just a few things here that are of note are on the items of interest page. We're about 780,000, or excuse me, 760,000 collected, just under 4% of our local revenue budget. As I always like to remind, those tax receipts will start coming in mid to late December. County revenues are about 11,000 and are lower. State revenues, collections are about 650,000 or 28% of the budget and are on par with where we've been in prior years. The federal revenues are at about 33% of the budget and are higher. This is mostly due to our receipt of federal coronavirus relief funds. And our other revenues are 144,000, and that is due to the sale of our Burgess properties. On the expense side, just a high level look at this. Our expenses are right in line where we would expect to see them this year, of course, with the COVID exceptions. I have noticed expenses coming through, starting to supply up for the potential for coming back to school if appropriate later in the winter after the new year. So we're gearing up. We're also continuing our purchase of mitigation supplies and capital expenditures in some cases. You heard Mike talk about bottle fillers and the electrostatic sprayers for the disinfectants and sanitizing sprays. So all of those things are captured in the expenditures. As we move on down, on the operating funds chart here, 85% of our local revenue is local revenue, and the other split between state, county, federal, and other, with state being the largest of them at 10%. We have heard that there has been the state is releasing some additional funds to schools. We have not yet seen that, but are looking forward to what that could potentially look like for the district. Of course, we don't count money until it's in the bank, so we are not holding our breath, but we will be anticipating some word from the state soon. Moving on through to our expenditures, everything is, especially in salary and benefits, is tracking right expected where they would be expected this time of year. Salary and benefits do make up about 75% of our overall expenditures on the operating funds, followed by purchase service, supplies, and capital outlay. Right now, with the budget adjustment we made last month, we're budgeted at a fund balance of about 42%, which is significantly lower than where we finished in 2020. However, you'll remember that we did have a significant surplus due to us not being in session and some of those funds, and especially summer travel and our middle school expeditions not taking place. So that number is rather inflated. So the 42% that we're showing now is about where we would expect to be had COVID not occurred in the spring. So all in all, district finances are looking good, and MRH remains poised to weather the storm that is this COVID-19 dilemma. Any questions? All right, Katie, with your permission, I'll move on to the budget amendment number 2.
Please do. Thank you.
So again, I will not belabor this. If you can scroll down to the 6th page, pages 1 through 5, I break down the changes that we're proposing by fund. I aggregate them on page 6. So we'll just start there. We are asking for some adjustments on the revenue side, about $250,000 in local revenue. So this is writing off the remainder of the preschool and Discover Club revenues that we would have normally experienced if we were in session, if those two programs were in session, excuse me. Followed by just some minor adjustments to fines, forfeitures, and e-sheets on the county side. And then on the federal side, this is primarily due to our coronavirus relief funds. So those funds are offsetting slightly the local revenue decreases due to preschool and Discover Club for an overall decrease in revenue of about $101,000. Moving on to the expenditure side, salaries and benefits are increased due to the addition of the teaching assistant positions that we are adding to the buildings in response to our virtual learning and interventions. And let's see, purchase services, decreasing those mostly due to changes in purchase service due to COVID. We're not traveling as much. The trash service is significantly cheaper. That's done by weight, and since there's hardly any trash these days, since there's no students, that's significantly lower. Also, we've made some adjustments to some of our other purchase services there that may not be occurring. Supplies are up. We're mostly for COVID expenditures, capital outlay. The majority of this is cost of issuance as related to our bond sale. Those need to be recorded. This is taking care of that, plus a little bit for some of those electrostatic sprayers that we talked about. So overall, it's a decrease to the budget of $567,000, which is a decrease in revenue and an increase in expenditures. So typically not the way you'd like to adjust your budget. However, given the circumstances, this is the position that we are now in. So if we scroll down one more page to the general fund. On the operating side, on the October financial statements, I presented to you about a 42% fund balance. With these changes, that will take our fund balance down to about just under 41% at 40.9%. So all in all, I feel 40% is a remarkable fund balance, and we are, again, in a strong financial position, and we are incredibly blessed by the generosity of our community to continue to support the district to the degree that they do, to be in this position to continue to support our students through this COVID public health crisis. Any questions? All right, I will soldier on then. Let me move my documents around here. So the next thing is the COVID expenses. I simplified this for you. The list was getting to be to a couple of pages, and I was no longer happy with what that was looking like. So I consolidated this into categories, and I thought that appropriate from the high level perspective for the board and our community here. So you can see here that in the first column, we have items that are paid for by the district, plus any amounts that are encumbered, not yet expended, total expenses, inclusive of the encumbrances, and then those expenses that are reimbursable by our grant funds from both county, state, and the Fed. So you can see that we've experienced significant expense reimbursements from those sources. So all in all, we are at about $197,000 net cost to the district. So all things considered, that is a rather modest expense given the depth of the work that we're doing to mitigate and prepare for our students to be back in session. Any questions on those?
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate attention to detail, as always. All right, we're on to action items for the evening. Motion on the CTE curriculum proposal from last meeting.
I move to approve the CTE curriculum proposal as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Policy batch. Motion.
I move to approve policies DC, GBAD, GBEBB, GCBA, IC, IKF, JCC, JHCB, and HIB as presented by MSBA in the 2020A policy batch.
Second.
Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. A motion on the civil engineering proposals.
I'll move to approve the CEDC civil engineering proposals for the MRH elementary and high school as submitted.
Second.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Motion to move to executive session.
I move to enter executive session in accordance with section 610.021, subsections 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 13, and section 610.022 of the revised statutes of Missouri on November 19th, 2020 for the following specific reasons: personnel matters, identifiable student matters.
Thank you, Nikki.
Second.
Thank you, Wes. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. We'll reconvene to executive session. Good night.